Hi, we just want to let you know that we're out here celebrating the anniversary of when the statue was first unveiled, 5/24/2014. Dr. Ovi Duncantel Jr., and we want to give a shout out to attorney Benjamin Hall for making the financial contribution to make this a success. Today, Black Heritage Society, board members, executive board member, advisory council, all of us want to just join in this celebration for having this statue unveiled. Teresa Brewer with the Black Heritage Society. We just want to thank everyone for joining us into the Juneteenth celebration. Our kickoff will begin June the 3rd, 2022. Join us for this great event. Join us in the podcast, Understanding Juneteenth. Again, Juneteenth is now a federal holiday. So please click on the link. Join us at www.blackheritagesociety.net or call 281-405-0006. Thank you. The music, the questions, as well as the documentary review. Thank you again. Welcome to the Black Heritage Society podcast, focusing on Juneteenth, a federal holiday. Thank our listeners, audience, and our special guests for being here today as we prepare for the Juneteenth celebration. Today, we will review our history of the Emancipation Proclamation and the African American family. Guests, we have Helen Johnson, has a Master of Arts degree and a licensed professional counselor. Dr. John Stanford Jr., also known as public health professional, bioengineer, and bioethics. Thank you again for being here. You're welcome. Black Heritage Society has partnered with Melanized Media to bring you a documentary film of Understanding Juneteenth. I've had the pleasure of speaking with co-founder Born Logic Allah. The film points out we are celebrating what we are celebrating, why we are celebrating, and how to celebrate June 19th respectfully. So be sure to click on the link below, complete your name, your email, and you will receive a link to watch it at no charge to you. It is donated by the Black Heritage Society. Again, thank you for sharing. This is our question and answer session, and we're going to start with you, Miss Helen Johnson. One of the popular questions that we had, a lot of people were asking about, who were the indentured servants, and when did they arrive to Houston?
Well, good question. The indentured servants were someone that no one would ever expect because there's so many controversy about it. And it goes all the way back to 1619. In 1619, there were, they said 20 or so, or doing my research, I saw where it might have been 30. 30 Angolans were brought to the American colonies, Virginia in particular, Jamestown, Virginia, 1619. Now, remember, this is 1 year before the Mayflower arrived.
Yes.
Now, in my research, because I was looking for the free blacks, and I found out that these young men were not slaves, even though a lot of sources say that 1619, when they arrived, they were slaves. They were captured, they were kidnapped by slavers, and an English ship intercepted that cargo and took these particular 30. It was 300 on there, but they took these 30, which goes back to what I had been told, that there was some boys playing on the shore, and they saw the ship, and they were curious about it, so they tricked them into getting on the ship, and when they got on the ship, they sailed. So they took this 25 or 30 boys and took them to Jamestown. Now, remember this, England had not declared slavery. They had lots of black people there. They were lords and nobles, but they had not declared slavery at this time, unlike what some people are saying. So when they got to the colonies, because England itself, who was the mother country, did not have slavery, had not begun slavery, then they couldn't have slaves in the colonies. So then what happened? These 30 African Angolans were indentured servants like everybody else. They became indentured servants. They served their time, whatever that servitude was, and after they finished it, 4 to 7 years, they were free. They were given land. They were given everything to succeed. So the indentured servants were those people who worked from 4 to 5 years to pay for their stay in the colony, and after those 4 to 5 years, 4 to 7 years, whatever, then they were set free. And so the indentured servants that I'm talking about, and most of us are interested in, are those that arrived in 1619, and they were not slaves.
Got it. Wow, that was a lot of information. Well, the saying used to be, if there was one drop of black blood, then you were black, classified.
That's an American thing.
Okay.
In England, they had black nobles and all of that, kings, queens, even popes were black. We didn't have white supremacy now in 1619. You have to remember that.
Gotcha.
That's a made-up thing. That's a divisive thing. It's something to control and to demonize and to denigrate. It did not exist then. They had religious intolerance. So if you were not a Christian, then they were intolerant of you. But if you were a Christian, you were included. Nobody was looking at color. And when they came over on the Mayflower, that's why some blacks were on that Mayflower, but they don't want to tell you that.
Yes.
Okay?
And with that being said, some question if President Abraham Lincoln was an African American as well.
President Lincoln his ancestry stemmed from those 25 or 30 young men that they brought to the Virginia colonies. They called them Malungeons. Actually, the Angolans call themselves Malangu. Malangu means we came on the same ship.
Yes.
We came on the same ship, but they mispronounced it, called Malungeons. They didn't want to call them black. They couldn't say they were slaves, and they were free people. They were all men, and they married white women. They married Native American women, and so a lot of the research that we have is erroneous, and it could have been planned that way to deceive us. And they were saying that the Melungeons were actually the offspring of plantation owners and their slaves. That's not true. The Melungeons were the descendants of these Angolan blacks, these Africans,
Yes.
who had children by white women and Native American women and, those different Europeans. But that's where the Melungeons came from. And yes, Abraham Lincoln mother went all the way back to this group. And not only Abraham Lincoln, but Elvis Presley and lots more, but we won't get into that right now.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Wow, that was a lot of information. But we have a question for you, Dr. John Stafford. And can you provide some ways or tell the organization how the African American financially stabilized themselves during that time?
Well, thank you for inviting me to be a guest on your program. But now, we were talking about the time of the Juneteenth.
Yes.
And it's much like what we are in nowadays. The black family was held together closely by the patriarch, matriarch of that community, and they respected that. But like today, there were many external things that affected how that family functioned.
Yes.
If you were living under slavery, you had to contend with that. Even after you were free, you had to contend with those conditions where anything you did, you could be lynched, killed, taken out, burned, or whatever. And to survive in those conditions, you had to do what the master said, to appease the master. I grew up in a community in Alabama, in Eufaula. Eufaula is in Barber County, and Barber County was the county seat. Clayton was the county seat for Barber County. And guess who came from Clayton, Alabama? George Wallace himself.
Oh.
And when I was at a young age, we would go there and look and see, fountains, water fountains for whites, water fountains for colors. You had to walk on the other side of the street in certain places. So you, as a young child, you experience these things. You say, well, why is there a difference? And why are we doing this? But yes, in order to survive, you had to go through this. You had to say yes sir and no ma'am when you were speaking to a white person. You had to walk on the other side of the street. You had to bow your heads in certain situations. But you did this in order to survive. I used to wonder how, my father was a minister and a farmer. And when we gathered crops, we would go in and he would, with his goods, and sell the goods and trade the goods. And I always wondered, why he was always so respectful, didn't, make an argument or anything. But it was to get along and to take care of his family. Now, there was others in the community who were not, no farmers. There was carpenters. There was some was worked in banks, some worked in the other institutions. But they had similar type of things that they had to deal with. And what it all goes back to is what we have to deal with today.
Yes.
And that is societal racism. Stokely Carmichael back in the 60s first classified it as institutional racism. So you had institutional racism or societal racism back then, and you have it now. And you have it affected all different aspects of our society. From housing, from education, to civil and criminal justice, the criminal justice system itself, policing. You have all of these different factors being affected by societal racism. And what that is, that what societal racism is defined as, when in a society, when there is a group of people making laws and enacting laws that discriminate against another group or other groups within that society. That's societal racism. It can be laws, it can be acts, it can be omissions, but it's still racism. Yes. And it's not overt. When Stokely Carmichael first talked about institutional racism, it was a racism that he defined as a racism that was not overt, but it was subtle. The racism that I experienced as a child was overt. You knew the racism existed. Today, with societal racism, sometimes you don't know it exists unless you have been educated or been learned what it is and what it looks like. When you go looking for housing, whether you're renting or buying, when you go into a bank to get a loan, when you deal with other businesses to conduct your business. Say, for instance, many of us blacks today are entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And when you're dealing with other people, your white counterparts have better breaks than you do when you're dealing with those whites in society. Sometimes even when you're dealing with blacks, because the system is set up that way.
Wow.
So it's a mind-boggling thing, but there's certain things that we can do individually to prepare ourselves to deal with our financial situation, deal with the environment, and that is things like such as savings, making sure you have a savings account, making sure that you set up some type of plan for the education. If you're a parent, set up some type of plan for the education of your children. Don't just depend on just being able to get a loan. You got to start the process early. You teach your child, try to get them to understand, appreciate what they want to do in life, seek avenues and people to help you prepare for that particular vocation or calling, and set up contacts, set up resources to help you move along that path. That's a part of education. Then another key thing that many of us fail to do is studying to make wise financial decisions.
Yes.
It's not just a textbook. It's not just going to a mentor. It's a whole plethora of things. It's many things that you can pull together to really make wise decisions. Finding good financial planners, finding someone who works at a corporation who is a CEO, find someone who's a CEO at a bank that's in your favor. They could be black, white, Hispanic, Asian, but if they are in your favor, use that to your advantage to gain that knowledge, to open those doors, to access that capital. A third thing you can do is buying property, property ownership. That's a key thing, because early on in the history of our country, many blacks actually owned property that was given to them. But over time, it was systematically through, unscrupulous people taken away from them.
Yes.
You had the property, but they found a way to take it away from you. And it is still happening today. There are certain people who find a way to take, if you have property, if you were given property from, passed down from your grandfather and down to you, like if you had the property back in the Juneteenth time, you inherited that property. Mm. If you're not careful, people will find ways to take that property away from you.
Yes, that's.
So it's a lot of things that are external that affect you internally, but there's certain things that you can do yourself to protect yourself, and not only protect yourself, protect your those in your family and those in your community. Because all the time, it's not just about you. You may live in a community, but you may want this, but what is best for the community?
Got it. Wow. That really kind of leads us up to today, especially with Dr. Martin Luther King, our civil rights leader. He stressed economic empowerment. What does that mean to African Americans today, Ms. Johnson, in your words?
Economic empowerment?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm so glad that Martin Luther did come around to that, because that's what Malcolm X was telling them all the time. And they became good friends toward the end there. Economic empowerment means, like Dr. Stanford was talking about, for us to get the tools that we need for us to accumulate wealth.
Yes.
Because the system that we coming out of a Jim Crow, especially us in the South, we're coming out of Jim Crow states here. And the system is set up to make sure that you do not accumulate wealth. Now, you have to understand that. And as we're becoming better informed, we're better educated today and all of that, and we can get together now. We need to learn how to pool our resources.
Yes.
And help each other. We still have this pitting thing going on, where it came from slavery, where when one is doing better, the others try to pull them down.
Yes.
Yeah, we call it that Kraft syndrome.
Yes.
We have to get over that, and we have to start setting up cooperative adventures where we all come together. We cannot do it alone. We need to be together. And like Dr. Stanford said, and inclusion is important. We need to coalesce with those that are non-blacks in order for us to succeed. So economic empowerment means our methods and strategies to accumulate wealth and to keep that wealth so we can transfer it to our generations.
Wow, that's good information. Well, Dr. Stanford, that empowerment, economic empowerment is a must for the African American family, and glad that you led us into that. What would be your final remarks on economic empowerment?
My final remark would be is for us as a black people, as we celebrate Juneteenth, as it's been made a federal holiday as of 2021, June 17th, June 2021, is to remember from whence we have come and where we need to go. And realizing that that's not going to be an easy road. And the reason I say remember from whence we have come, we talk about Jim Crow, that era, Reconstruction. We're talking about Civil Rights era, 1965 and that period, and how many of and right now today,
Yes.
we can realize that many of the gains that we made in that civil rights era in 1965 are being wiped out. So we have a challenge ahead of us today that we cannot and we must not ignore. If we ignore it, we're doomed. Just fathom this for a moment. If you have a group of people who are in power and they believe one way, and if you don't challenge them, they continue to have their way. They can be elected president, you can issue executive orders, that president can appoint federal judges, that president can nominate Supreme Court justices, that president can influence who get elected as governors, who will get elected as U.S. Congress representatives, U.S. Congress senators, influence who can get elected to state legislatures. That is far-reaching. And if someone who is on a path of building up self and making self more important than the democracy, then within a period of time, a short period of time, that democracy will no longer exist. It will be a government of and for and by that particular person, that particular group. We in a democracy today still have a government that is of, for, and by the people. We are part of the people. So we have an obligation not to let that democracy be destroyed.
Thank you for those last words. Ms. Johnson, you have any last words before we get ready to close? It's been great.
First of all, it's been quite informative. I've really enjoyed this, Ms. Brewer. I would like to say that we need to stop thinking of ourselves as slaves.
Yes.
Suppose you came from the Melungeon.
Yes.
It's just whenever I would ask, where's the listing of the free blacks in Texas? Where are they? They might give you one or two people, but they said it was 400 in certain areas. Why couldn't they give us a listing of that? So you might have been free all of the time.
Yes.
Or you could have been kidnapped. Your people could have been kidnapped. You just don't know. So get away from this slavery thing. We are born free.
Mm-hmm.
We are free. Whether or not your people were slaves, we are free, and we need to think as free people. See, right now, we are free, but we are thinking as a free people in a limited way. We need to remove all the boundaries that we have set up for ourselves. Go beyond what they've set up for us. Move barriers. We have to think beyond all of that if we're going to progress. And now is the time. This is the time when racism has become so blatant until they are emboldened and come out and say what they want to say, to do what they want to do. Now is the time that we must grab these reins now. We must get our people together, and we must move forward. And don't look back.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. This has been all good information, and the African American families and people have made a lot of progress. And just to close with, we're going to think about what Dr. Martin Luther King said in his I Have a Dream speech. 50 years ago, a great American, in whom symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. We just thank Dr. Martin Luther King for all the work that he did. And thank you all for being on the panel today. It was
Thank you for
great.
inviting us.
Ms. Brewer?
Yes.
May I interrupt?
Yes, yes.
As you brought up Martin Luther King, and I like this that he said, I look forward to the day when people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Yes,
Yes.
most definitely. And audience, we'd like for you all to visit our website, www.blackheritagesociety.net for more information. And remember to click on the link, put your email in, and you will receive a video, a documentary, Understanding Juneteenth. I want to thank you. I am Teresa Brewer, President of the Black Heritage Society.
Someone I can always talk to, yes, when I need it here. I can do some things, couldn't see my way. Right now, fade away.
Hi, I'm Teresa Brewer with the Black Heritage Society. The board members, the council, our committees, we just want to thank you for sharing in on our podcast. Be sure to continue to watch Understanding Juneteenth. Also, we have a special presentation by our Mayor Sylvester Turner. We just want to say thank you again and join the great music as well as the questions on the podcast. Enjoy yourself. By the very best friend I know, someone I can always talk to, yeah, when I need it here, can go. So many dreams, you think I can,
Hello, this is Mayor Sylvester Turner inviting you to celebrate Juneteenth with me this year. There are several events planned throughout the city of Houston to mark the federal holiday commemorating the emancipation of enslaved African Americans. This year, my 9th annual Juneteenth parade will begin at 10 a.m. on Saturday, June 18th. We will start at the Acres Home Multi-Service Center, 6719 West Montgomery. There will be marching bands, floats, horses, cars, community leaders, and celebrities. Please join us for fun and fellowship. And then on Saturday, June 18th and Sunday, June 19th, Houston's oldest park and the oldest park in Texas, Emancipation Park, will hold the 150th Juneteenth celebration presented by the Kinder Foundation. The celebration opens on Saturday with a ceremony acknowledging Juneteenth and Emancipation Park's history. Across both days, attendees will have access to local vendors, interactive kid zones, and much, much more. Each evening will conclude with musical performances by dynamic gospel and R&B artists. Juneteenth is a day for celebration and unity as we honor the past, embrace the present, and look to the future. I hope to see you at some of these events.
You know, it's Juneteenth. Yes. Every African American, I remember